From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov.
All right, so I had a request to compare the BCM-104 with the Earthworks Ethos. And I thought I'd tell you a story. And this is one of the craziest things that ever happened to me. So a long time ago, well, it seems like a long time ago, but many years ago, I pulled a drowning guy out of the water at a popular beach. And it ended up actually messing me up for a while. Let me explain. So years and years ago, it seems like at this point. So we were vacationing on the island of Maui. Beautiful vacation, much needed vacation. Sun, sand, time away from the booth. Just a beautiful family thing. And I'm in the water at Black Rock Beach. Right there, right off of Black Rock. And Black Rock is this beautiful, like outcropping of volcanic rock that rises up like a cliffside. And it's sacred to the ancient Hawaiians. Like they believe that this was where the spirits of the departed leapt off the earth into the afterlife. And so like kings would replicate this idea. They would dive off of the cliff in a big ceremonial thing. And now at Black Rock, they commemorate that by doing it every night at sunset for the tourists. So they've kind of cheapened it up a little bit, but it's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony for a beautiful tradition. So I'm at Black Rock Beach, and we're in the water, just kind of having fun, snorkeling, doing the whole thing. And a bunch of helicopters just come screaming over us. And they're going north. And first it was one and then another. And then within the span of a few minutes, like it was like basically a small fleet of helicopters. And they were all like search and rescue, Coast Guard, police, fire. I mean, like every emergency possible helicopter you could imagine was going in the same direction north, right past Black Rock Beach. And, of course, everybody's like looking at it, like what's going on? Because it was obvious something's going on. 10 miles up the coast from where we were is a attraction in Maui called the Nakalele Blowhole. And the Nakalele Blowhole is another outcropping of volcanic rock, but it's like a shelf that juts out over the ocean. And when the water hits underneath this shelf, right, it forces up through this lava tube. The blowhole, and it creates this geyser effect where water shoots up like boom, like 50 feet in the air. It's really cool. And people come down and they park on the road and they walk down this hill onto it's private property. But you're allowed to go on there and be respectful of the land, and you walk down and you get to the lava part of it, and it's all slick because it's lava, right? I mean, it's lava that's been being hit with water, and it's probably, a couple hundred, maybe 300 years old, this lava flow. And so the blowhole, right, at the bottom there is on an area that's flat, and it is all lava rock. So when the water hits it, right, when the water comes and it shoots up through the geyser and sometimes splashes over the top of the shelf and all that, it's very wet down there. And so, you see tourists go down there in their flip-flops, and which is a terrible idea, right? I mean, you would think that it's ill-advised to go down there in inappropriate footwear because, first of all, you have to walk down a cliff. And like a long hill, not really a cliff, but you have to walk down a long hill, and it's dangerous. So what happened was that day on Maui, there was a guy named David Potts who had come to the island on vacation with his wife, who was just about to have cancer surgery. So this was kind of I don't want to say last hurrah, but it was kind of like a vacation before things were going to get really serious and possibly possibly it could be the last vacation that they take. And so it was a big deal for him and his wife. David Potts goes down to the blowhole, right? And you can get close. There's no rope wall. There's no fence. You can get close, but you would think that you wouldn't want to get too close because the water shoots up and then it gets sucked back in through the blowhole. It's kind of dangerous. But David Potts decided he was going to dance around in the spray around the blowhole, right? And I mean, he wasn't expecting that a big wave, because we had some serious swells on Maui. I remember that. The water was definitely a little bit more turbulent, but not so much that you wouldn't go in the water. But here, where it crashes into the side of the Nakalele blowhole, it was banging. So a wave comes up, and it comes up over the top of the shelf of the blowhole, and it hits David Potts, and it knocks him into the blowhole. Now, the blowhole's only really the size of a manhole, right? I mean, it's not that big. It's not like a big chasm. And it knocks him down, and he gets sucked into the blowhole. And eyewitnesses reported that when the tide came back up immediately after, he resurfaced, and they couldn't grab him in time. I mean, it just happened so fast. He popped up and he went back down, and then that was it. Nobody ever saw David Potts again. And who knows? I mean, they did search and rescue off the island for a couple of days. And it was really a thing, because, word spread fast. It was on the news, and word spread fast. And it's in the middle of tourist season. It's July. So yeah, they never found his body. And for all we know, it could have gotten sucked into a separate, lava tube somewhere down there in the works. And who knows? But I mean, it was a terrible, terrible thing. It was kind of extremely disconcerting, so to say the least. And I remember going home, and it just kind of stuck with me, because I thought to myself, and I knew deep down in my heart, that this ill-advised thing that he had done is something I probably would have done myself, because I'm an idiot. And I could just see this happening to me, there but for the grace of God go I. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I was like, that could have been me. That really could have been me. Just my overthinking the danger in doing what I was doing. And so it really stuck with me, and I got obsessed about vacation tragedies. I know, that sounds twisted. And I literally wrote the book on people who die on vacation. It's called Fatal Sunset. And this is actually really not the gist of this story, but just some connective tissue. So I write this book called Fatal Sunset, and it details a number of stories about different people who went on vacation and didn't come home. And the book sells fairly well, and I write a sequel to it, another one, and this whole time, it just really sticks with me, this whole thing. So fast forward a couple years later, and this is when the really crazy thing happens. So we go back to the island of Maui, and it's on my mind. The David Potts thing is totally on my mind. And so, in the lead up to going back to Maui, I'm looking at the news on the island, seeing what's going on. And somebody drowns at Black Rock the week before we're about to go. And I'm like, how does this happen? How does this happen at a popular beach in season? How does somebody drown? And I mean, there's tides that pull you out. I mean, it's not, the ocean is dangerous. The ocean is powerful. You have to respect the power of the ocean. And so, the weekend before we go, my son and I are in the pool, just swimming, just, splashing around, playing catch with a Nerf ball and stuff. And he's a little guy at this point. And just because we're aware of this thing that happened, we'd practice dead man carries in the pool, just kind of goofing around, but not really. And I'm showing him what to do if you have to rescue somebody, if you have to pull an unconscious person out of the water, or if you had to rescue somebody, the way you grab them, come up from behind, go underneath their arm and kind of over the shoulder and, and pull them in like that, swimming with one arm. And so we're practicing dead man carries in the pool. And, and just kind of, it really was one of these things that was kind of in the back of my mind. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'm going to. So we land on the island. And I'm thinking about this thing that we'd done in that weekend, practicing dead man carries in the pool. And I'm like, all I don't want anything to happen on my vacation. I don't want to jump into investigative journalist mode. I don't want anything to happen. I don't want anything bad to happen. I don't want to be like, oh, we got to rush here so I can take pictures and I can have an exclusive, a story about something terrible that happened. No, I just want to have a nice, quiet vacation. That's all I ever want. So we get there on the 2nd of July, and it's beautiful. We're having a wonderful time. And so this is about the 7th of July. We go back to Black Rock Beach. We had been there a couple of days before. And we go back to Black Rock Beach. And as we're walking up to the beach, I take a selfie. I have a waterproof camera. And so I'm taking a selfie of us, standing there at Black Rock. And there's a guy there who's working. He's actually putting, stand-up paddle boards. Like he's putting them in racks and stuff like that. So he works there. He works for the resort. And he works for the Sheraton. Or he works for a subcontractor that rents out kayaks and paddle boards and stuff to people. And so he's like, hey, you want me to take your picture? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he takes a picture of the three of us. Really nice, And he asks my son, he's like, hey, have you jumped off Black Rock yet? And he's half joking, right? Because one of the things that people do at Black Rock is they climb up the side of it and they jump from the top of Black Rock into the water. And it's about 25, 30 feet from where you jump off Black Rock. There's a certain point where everybody goes up and there's a little kind of ledge. And it's a dangerous climb. So my son says, no, but my dad did. And I was like, yeah, I did a couple days earlier and it felt like I got hit by a truck. So, because when you're standing up there, right, you climb up there and again, it's all wet. It's lava. It's been hit by a million, waves and spray, water everywhere. So it's slick and there's parts of it that feel like razor sharp. So if you try to climb up the side of this thing and they're like little jagged, not steps, but footholds that you can get up there. So if you're agile enough, you can climb up there. And then when you get to the point, the little tiny point where you jump off, I mean, it is the little flat part where you jump off is barely wider than your 2 feet. Right? So you're standing up there and you're looking down into the water and the water is clear and beautiful, right? It's like a fishbowl down there. So you're 25, 30 feet up off the water and you can see about 25 or 30 feet down. And since it's clear, it really messes with your perspective. You're looking down and you can actually see like 50, 60 feet down, right? So, and it's kind of hard to judge where the water is. So when you get up there and you're about to jump off into the water, right? All of a sudden it's like, this looks like a much bigger jump than it is. And so you close your eyes and you step off the ledge and then, you hit the water and you hit the water hard. So I went feet first and it was like like hitting a hard surface. And it jarred my entire body. And it did. I woke up the next morning and I felt like I had been hit by a truck. And it took me a couple days to actually kind of normalize again. I was like, wow, that was a lot more impact than I was ready for. And so when I told the guy who took our picture, I was like, yeah, I jumped off and I felt like I got hit by a truck. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, you have no idea how many people I've pulled out of the water with a separated shoulder or a perforated eardrum. And I'm like, wow. And he's like, yeah, if you go in the wrong way, because some people will try to dive. Some people will try to high dive off and some people will go in and they kind of hit the water wrong, because they're not trying to just pencil jump right in like feet first. They go in and it's like, you hit that water wrong like that and you're going to get hurt. And so I'm thinking, separated shoulder, punctured eardrum. I mean, you know, and especially imagine you blow out your eardrum on vacation on an island that you have to fly home from. How does that work? How do you fly home with a punctured eardrum in a pressurized airplane cabin? So I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking about what this guy just told us. And I'm like, this, this again, I'm like, wow, you know, I'm glad I didn't have to get pulled out of the water by anyone. So we go to the beach. And because it's the three of us and my son's a little guy, and he wasn't quite into the snorkeling thing yet, he didn't really enjoy it. So what would happen was we would have one snorkel set, and my wife and I would trade off going out and swimming around, snorkeling around, and looking at all the beautiful fish. I mean, there's so many fish just off of Black Rock Beach. It is. It's like snorkeling in a tropical aquarium. It's really awesome. So one of us would hang and stay and play in the water with our son, and the other one would go snorkeling. So my wife goes first, and she's out for like 15, 20 minutes, and my son and I are having a great time. And so my wife comes back, and we trade, and I go out. And so the first thing I do, because we've been to Black Rock a few times. So the first thing I do is I swim around the point. And when you go around the point of Black Rock, because it kind of comes down and then it notches into the coastline a little bit, like where Black Rock is. And then so the current kind of comes down and it kind of rips around the point. So it actually goes really mostly it rips around the point going north. So you swim around the point and then there's a cove on the north side of Black Rock. And if you're savvy enough and you go there and you know where to look, you can always find a sea turtle because that's kind of where they hang out. And people love to go see the sea turtles, they're big, giant, like 5-foot wide sea turtles. They're huge. They're awesome. And so you know where to go look, right, in the cove. But it's a little bit dicey because the way the water comes in, the water comes out. And I found out that the person who drowned at Black Rock drowned in the cove. Because at the back of the cove, there's a tiny little, what looks like a cave, but it only goes back about 10 feet. So someone went in there and they couldn't get out because of the way the tide kind of comes in. And they got beaten into the rock inside and they died. They drowned inside the cove in Black Rock. And so I'm swimming around very carefully and I notice a sea turtle and he's right there. And I'm like, he just kind of swims right by me. And he's within a few feet of me. Right. And, you know, sea turtles are protected species. You know, you're not allowed to touch them. It's like a $500 fine if you're caught like touching a sea turtle. And you see idiots do it all the time over there. So I'm trying to keep a respectful but close distance. And I'm taking pictures. I have like 150 pictures of this sea turtle as I'm swimming with it. It's swimming with me. And it doesn't seem to mind me. It's not swimming away from me. It's kind of swimming and allowing me to swim next to it. You know, about 5-6 feet away, not that far away. And so I have all these pictures and it goes down and then it comes back up and it's sticking its head out of the water. And I have like this beautiful, like giant, like 24 by 36 blow up of the sea turtle on the wall in the living room. And so I'm having this incredible one-on-one experience with a sea turtle. It's like, it is this pure, natural, amazing Jacques Cousteau moment. And so I'm swimming with this turtle, and he just keeps going. And at some point I'm like, you know what? I've been swimming with this turtle for like 5 minutes or so. I turn around and I realize that I'm a little bit further from shore than I really wanted to be. This is the furthest from shore I've been here. And like I said, the current can get a little weird around the point there. And so I'm like, okay, bye, Mr. Turtle, right? So I'm swimming back, I'm snorkeling back, and it's cool because as I'm swimming back with my face down in the water with my snorkel up, there's like rays going by underneath and giant schools of fish, and it's really neat, right? And then I'm kicking. This is taking a while. I'm like, wow, okay. And then as I'm getting closer to the point, I see someone in the water, and they're just hanging limp in the water, just completely and totally limp in the water, and I'm watching it. And I get up and I can see them. I can see them because the water is so clear. And I'm maybe, I don't know how far away. I think I was at least maybe 50, 60 feet. You know, I don't know. It wasn't that far away. And I'm looking at this person. I'm like, please move. Please move. Please don't be dead. Right? And I'm thinking the whole time of the dead man carry. I'm thinking of people jumping off a black rock and hurting themselves. And I'm like, what if this person is unconscious? What if so I'm swimming towards them closer and closer and closer. And as I get within about 10, 15 feet, and there's still no movement, they all of a sudden they kind of look up and they're like, and I had surprised this person because they were, I think they were actually asleep. I think this person was actually taking kind of a half of a cat nap in the water, but they were just completely chilled out and I startled them. And I felt bad because I had busted somebody's vibe. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And I swam around and I'm like, okay, thank goodness. I thought you were dead. And so I get into the beach and I'm telling my family, I'm telling my wife and my son about this whole thing about swimming with this turtle. And I'm showing them all the pictures on my phone. And I'm like, you'll never believe this, right? And the whole thing with the person, I'm telling my son, remember the dead man carries and blah and all that. And as this is happening, I'm standing with my back like right at the edge of the water, right? We're actually basically about waist deep in water. And I'm standing with my back to the beach, facing out towards the water. And they're facing me, like looking towards the beach. And then I hear this sound. And it sounds like an animal yelping. It sounded odd. And I wasn't sure what it was, right? And again, this is July 7th, right? We're in the middle of season. There are at least 100 people at the beach. And I'm like, but what is this sound? And I look over, right? And I see somebody and they're kind of like flailing. They're kind of, and and I asked my son, I'm like, is that guy okay or is he screwing around, right? Because my first instinct was this sound was kind of like a cry. And then I see this person go under and then they pop back up and then they make this other sound again. That is definitely a cry for help, an absolute cry for help. And this is the part of the story that is really difficult for me. This is the part that really, so this person is about 30 feet away from me. And we make eye contact. And I'm looking at this person's terrified eyes. And I've never seen someone who was in this terror of I'm about to die. I mean, this guy was drowning. This guy was drowning at this beach. And he makes this sound. It's I can't even replicate it. I don't even want to try, but it is like a wounded animal yelp. And I'm looking right at him. And it's hard because I close my eyes and I can see it so clearly. And so and then he goes under again. And so I hand my son my snorkel goggles and the camera. And I'm like, hold this. And I'm still got my fins on and I just kick right out to this guy. Swimming as hard and fast as I can to get to this guy. And again, he's only 30 feet away. So it's a matter of just a few seconds for me to get to him. And he's this guy's in complete distress. I mean, he's half underwater and I come up and I just grab him under his arm. And I'm like, you're going to be okay. And he's saying something, but it's not in English. And I realize he's a Chinese guy. He doesn't speak any English. He kind of says something like, it almost sounds like help, thank you, right? I mean, but as I grab this guy and I'm pulling him in, and as I get about 10 feet away off from where my family is, my wife comes rushing out. She grabs the guy's other arm and we bring him in. And he's like completely shaken, as am I. And this guy's wife, I'm guessing his wife, right? She comes rushing up. She was in the water, and she was kicking around at Black Rock Beach in a swim ring, but like a really cheapo swim ring like you would buy a child to use in a pool. Like, those really super, super cheap plastic swim rings, and she's in the ocean with it. And, she comes kicking up, and she's like I don't even remember what she said, but I think she's like, thank you," and she takes him, and I'm like, I say to the guy, "Are you okay?" And he's like, yeah," and, she leads him off to the thing, and I mean, it was like this thing, and I'm like, "What just happened? What just happened?" And so, I'm, like, in complete and utter shock of this, and so we I look at my family and I'm like, "Let's go. We need to leave now because I need to take a walk and really kinda sort through this." We're all just really in total shock. And as we're leaving, I have my camera. My son gives me back my camera. And no, he didn't take any pictures of the whole thing happening because he was just, like, in shock while the whole thing was happening. And I grab a picture. I'm able to holding the camera upside down and just pointing it in the direction of where this guy and his wife went. And they're young people. They may have been on their honeymoon. Um, they're on Maui, and they're sitting on this towel. And this guy, he was a young Chinese guy, like totally rail thin, and he was wearing a white hoodie, thin white hoodie in the water. And what happened was, I'm guessing this guy can't swim. And he just kinda waded out into the water and probably just got slowly pulled out a little bit further and further, and then up to a point where maybe because then the water, the what happens is the sea floor right there, it just kinda is, like, flat, and then it gradually kinda there's a low grade, and then it drops off. So, I think he got to a point where he couldn't stand anymore and couldn't get back to where he could stand because the tide was pulling him out. And like I said, this is a busy beach. There's like 100 people there. I mean, how does this happen? How does this happen? And then I realized how it does happen because you've got 100 people there or more, but everybody is in their own little world. Most of these 100 people have their face in the water looking for sea turtles and fish and all that. And when you have your face underwater and your ears underwater, you can't really hear what's going on. You're not paying attention to what's going on. And again, this is a place where people snorkel. So if somebody is just splashing around and they go underwater, that's not really a cause for concern. So yeah, this guy almost drowned at a popular beach around like 100 people, just like somebody did the week before, right? And and the reason this is such a hard story for me to tell is because I did write the book on people dying on vacation. And, the whole time, writing this book, the overarching theme of what happens, what causes this kind of thing to happen, is that people take risks on vacation. When they go on vacation, sometimes people feel invincible and they take risks and do things that they normally wouldn't do at home. And this was exactly what happened. But it was it was the eyes. It was this guy's eyes just staring back at me, just looking at me, just pleading for help, just the look on this guy's eyes that he was dying, that he was about to die, and he knew it. He knew he was about to die. And that's exactly what I read from this look in his eyes, this terror. And it's not just the terror. It wasn't the terror of somebody riding a roller coaster or that slingshot ride at the fair. It's not that. It's a complete and different look of terror when somebody thinks they're about to die. And that was it. It was like it broke that veil of like what the truth is about the moment somebody thinks that they're like at the end of their life. And it really messed with me just because I would close my eyes and I would see this so clearly. I can close my eyes and I can see it now, but I've kinda learned to not let it bother me. It's still hard for me to tell this story, but I wanna tell it because I feel like now the more I tell it, the less it has a hold on me. Because for years I couldn't tell this story. I've tried a couple of times, but I couldn't. Um, and so, yeah. So, we're flying home a couple days later, and this whole thing is still with me. The what had just happened. And it happened so quietly and quickly, and, it wasn't like there was no reporters on scene, there was nothing. The guy said, "Thank you," and I was like, "Are you okay?" And kinda nodded, and we left, and we parted, and that was it. And half of me thinks that this is the kinda guy that probably, like, this guy, this ill-advised thing that he did, so, like, if I found out today, "Oh, yeah, the guy went home and he crossed the street, in front of a truck and got hit." You know, something like that wouldn't surprise me. It's just kinda like, "Wow, why did you do that?" But, I guess I'm glad I was there when he did. And so the coda on this is that, so we go, right? So somebody drowns at Black Rock. The week before we go, and we go home, and this thing and we go and this happens, and then we come home, and then, like, a week or 2 after that, somebody else drowned at Black Rock. And I mean, I'm not laughing, I'm just kind of somebody else drowned at Black Rock, but nobody drowned on my watch. And, so ultimately, right, I mean, this happened, and the, uh the postscript on this is that it happened in front of my son. I saved a guy's life in front of my kid. He saw me save somebody's life. So really at this point, it's like I, I've really proven everything I have to prove to my son. So yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like, okay, I can retire from trying to be like a good example. But it's like, yeah, like there's really nothing else I can do to, as a parent, in front of my kid. So, yeah, and, that was crazy, man. But yeah, nobody drowned on our watch. All right, so you've been listening to the Earthworks Icon Pro and the Neumann BCM-104. What do you think? All right, nation, you know what to do. Leave a comment. Until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.